You had mentioned that we don't have that much information about HaLevi's life and teachers. What about colleagues, associates, students? Who did he associate with that we know of?
Well, I mentioned Moshe Ibn Ezra, who was a generation older than he was, who was a major poet and also a student of poetry. Perhaps his closest colleague and even relative was Abraham Ibn Ezra, who was the same family of Moshe Ibn Ezra, but they're not related. There are many legends about Ibn Ezra. According to some legends, Yehuda HaLevi met this poor, bedraggled person in the marketplace, and they started talking Torah, and he brings home this unfortunate fellow. His wife takes one look at him and says, "Don't bring him here. He's going to marry your daughter." And it ends up being Abraham Ibn Ezra who married their daughter. He did not marry their daughter. Abraham Ibn Ezra perhaps was the father of the wife of Yehuda HaLevi's son. So they might have been mechutanim, we say in in-laws with each other. This is also a debatable point. It's based on a letter in the Geniza, which uses a word which usually means uncle, but Ibn Ezra couldn't have been an uncle of Yehuda HaLevi because Ibn Ezra wasn't a Levi. But what we know most about their relationship is the fact that Ibn Ezra, in his commentaries on the Bible, quotes Yehuda HaLevi quite often. And an interesting example, for instance, is in the Ten Commandments, where Ibn Ezra says that Yehuda HaLevi asked him, Ibn Ezra, why the Ten Commandments begins with the statement, "I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage." And Ibn Ezra writes that he explained to HaLevi that this has to do with basically different types of Jews. You have those who understand philosophy, and it was enough to say, "I'm the Lord your God," and others who don't understand philosophy, to which one had to add the historical aspect, "took you out of the land of Egypt." In the Kuzari, when Yehuda HaLevi discusses it, he gives the exact opposite answer. He says the reason we begin the Ten Commandments with history is to identify God as the God of history. So the two of them talked, often disagreed. In 1140, when Yehuda HaLevi left for the land of Israel, Abraham Ibn Ezra left for Europe. But this was the closest colleague that we know. We know that he had friends. Chalfon HaLevi, who was a merchant from Egypt, and it's thanks to a letter from HaLevi to Chalfon, where he mentions the book Al-Kitab al-Chazari, the book of the Chazars, the Kuzari, which is a great discovery from the Geniza. In terms of students and disciples, we have no indication that he had any of those. Obviously, he talked to people and he maybe taught, but he was a doctor. He was involved in communal affairs like rescuing captives. But it wasn't like we can identify a school or a circle of HaLevi and colleagues and students.
What was written first, the Kuzari or Ibn Ezra's commentary on the Bible?
Oh, okay. So all of Ibn Ezra's works are after Kuzari. Ibn Ezra, before he left Iberia in 1140, we don't know of any definite writings of his. It was only when he got to Europe, in Christian Europe, Western Europe, parts of France and Germany and England, that he wrote those commentaries and quoted HaLevi. In fact, it's very possible that given the fact that HaLevi was dead by then, he attributed things to HaLevi which HaLevi couldn't retract or couldn't refute because he was no longer around. So it's an interesting relationship between the commentaries of Ibn Ezra and Kuzari, but commentaries are definitely later.
And the Kuzari was written initially in what language?
Written in Arabic, or we call Judeo-Arabic. Judeo-Arabic is not only Arabic language in Hebrew letters, it also has many Hebrew words in it, and even has some grammatical aspects which are closer to spoken Middle Arabic than to classical Arabic of the Quran and of the Arabic writers. So it's written in Arabic, in an environment in which Arabic was the literary language. And this, by the way, despite the praises in the Kuzari of the Hebrew language as being the most perfect language, when it came to writing science, he had to write it in Arabic, as many other, or almost all other Jews in the Islamic world did. It was translated into Hebrew in 1167 by Judah Ibn Tibon, as one of the first works translated from Arabic into Hebrew. And it had a much, I'd say, more important afterlife in the Hebrew translation than it did in the original Arabic. We have only one almost full manuscript of the Kuzari surviving in Arabic. We have dozens of surviving manuscripts of the Hebrew translation. The Arabic world, which after Maimonides, there was not much interest in rationalism and philosophy. We have almost no resonance of the work. It's quoted by a number of people, but not very many. Maimonides never cites him specifically, even though there's reason to believe that he knew the Kuzari. But it's only in the Hebrew-speaking world who read the translation that the book became, or it had its most resonance.
What was the work, the Arabic work, published during his lifetime?
No, so I don't know. Publishing usually implies printing. Right. Did he issue it?
Right.
He wrote it. Obviously, it got to other people.
Right.
But the it did not. We don't, except for some Geniza fragments and this one manuscript which was written 300 years after the book was written. We don't have very much evidence of the survival of the or the influence of the original book in the Arabic-speaking world.
And where is that manuscript today?
It's in the Bodleian Library of Oxford, okay, and was sort of rediscovered in the 19th century, which is when they started to make editions. There was an edition of, in the 1880s, of this Arabic text. A much better edition, including Geniza fragments, was published in 1971. There have been quite a number of recent Hebrew translations, most from the Arabic. In terms of the English translations, there's the only one currently available that was made from the original Arabic was done by the same person who edited the text. His name's Hartwig Hirschfeld. There have been a number of English translations which unfortunately have not been made from the Arabic. They've been made from the Hebrew and are therefore not sufficiently accurate. Sometime, hopefully in the not too far future, will be an edition of a new translation done by Barry Cogan, will be published by Yale Judaic, a series of the Yale University Press. I'm working on that, and it's not quite yet into production, so it'll be a little bit while yet.